economics in a bag. The smallest of it all goes.
At the base of the Sarawat Mountains, Malakia is probably the largest and most variable expanse of freshwater habitat in southwestern Saudi Arabia. A dam closes a narrow gap where four major wadi systems meet. This aquatic habitat is dominated by the ever-present tilapia, virtually eradicating all endemic species of fish. In turn, the volume of tilapia attracts vast numbers of fish-eating birds, and this lake is considered one of the most important areas for birds in Arabia. The squacco heron is in seasonal courtship plumage, here in vast numbers to feast on the abundance of tilapia. The glossy ibis wades by, resplendent in its multi-hued feathers.
Many animals that inhabit the same environment, like freshwater fish, that are dependent on the very limited freshwater bodies here in Arabia, they have the same requirements in conservation as other freshwater animals. Freshwater fish, amphibians, terrapins, but then also freshwater insects or crustacea, which are all part of the same ecosystem. It's only if you have if you understand the whole processes in an ecosystem, you will be able to conserve this fauna appropriately. If you take out one link of this chain, then the whole system may collapse, and therefore it is very important, above all in the case of these very fragile freshwater environments, to include all the components of the ecosystem in order to conserve it in an efficient manner.
An example of how to maintain the ecological balance can be found here at Wadi Mujib, along the eastern shores of the Dead Sea, 400 meters below sea level, the lowest place on Earth. This nature reserve sustains a healthy equilibrium between all of its freshwater wildlife. The constant water flow of these wadi streams stimulates a vibrant and highly diverse habitat. These Capoeita damascena, commonly known in Arabia as the Damascus fish, also seem to enjoy the dynamic environment. Grazing on a thin film of algae and bacteria accumulated on the gully sides at Wadi Mujib, the Damascus fish reaches the southernmost limit of its range. Although this fish represents a healthy population, like all freshwater fish in Arabia, they face numerous risks.
The government was planning to build a dam in the middle of Wadi Mujib, and actually with discussion, with highlighting the importance of Mujib, they think that we are fighting against people drinking water, but actually our argument was and is actually there are other alternatives of using the water, and there are other sites that you can build the dam and so on. So we provided the alternative with communication. We forced the environmental impact assessment process. We went to the media, we wrote articles about the site. With all these combinations, we managed to really move a dam, and that was an amazing story for RCN because everybody was saying it's a losing battle.
In this case, an ecosystem was saved. But habitat loss is an ongoing problem in most parts of the world, and we are constantly running the risk of losing species, perhaps even before they have been discovered. In the heart of Jordan's desert, an important wetland reserve in Azraq is one ecosystem that was severely threatened by human water consumption. This was the only permanent fresh water within 12,000 square kilometers of desert, supporting a wealth of life, and the one location in the world for Jordan's only surviving endemic vertebrate, the Azraq killifish, Aphanias sirhani. Despite being declared a reserve in 1977, Amman's water authority began extensive water extraction, supplying water to Amman, as well as being used locally for irrigation. The effect on this rare fish and other wildlife was devastating.
In 1995, the species was thought to be extinct. Their population structure was completely destroyed and no larvae found in this population because of the lower water level in Azraq and the critical water situation.
But after years of lobbying and an extensive awareness campaign, the RSCN managed to stop the water extraction program with support from the UNDP and the Global Environment Fund. They even convinced the water authorities to pump water back into the wetlands, giving this region a whole new lease of life. An ambitious project that has quite literally brought this highly endangered little fish back from the brink of extinction. This fish would not have survived without the dedication of Jordanian researchers like Nashat Hamadan.
After rehabilitation of the wetland, RSCN started to think to rediscover the species, and the survey recommended to start a restocking program that depend on stocking the fish, breeding them, then reinforce them in nature.
Nashat's fish team built 2 stocking pools in 2001 and collected 40 fish as the basis of their captive breeding program. After 1 year, he was ready to release 250 killifish back into the wetland. Since then, he has been carefully monitoring their progress.
What we are doing now is to follow the distribution of the fish and to determine the impact of this fish caused by other species.
Tilapia now threaten to dominate this aquatic habitat.
Tilapian fish are very aggressive during the incubation period, and they breed on the habitats that are preferable for Aphanias sirhani.
It would be a tragedy if the tilapia were to wipe out years of hard conservation work. So for Nashat and his colleagues, the work never ends. The Sharjah Breeding Center for Endangered Arabian Wildlife in the UAE is working towards conservation through captive breeding programs of many threatened species. And it was here that Emma's still unidentified fish was brought for final identification.
This one has the very rudimentary disc, very rudimentary, totally different from this one.
Trying to identify the fish, Professor Krupp, the world's leading Arabian freshwater fish expert, and Professor Gordon Reid from Chester Zoo in the UK carefully dissect a specimen and compare it to known biological keys.
To the end of the hyperal plate.
After a tense wait for Emma,
none of the species that keys out immediately.
This fish does not fit any key, and Krupp finally concludes.
Okay, so we can be quite certain that it's a new species. because
That's great.
we can't be 100% sure because we might have got a specimen that is not very typical, but that's very unlikely.
As new species remain to be discovered, habitats are constantly under serious pressure throughout the whole region. Freshwater fauna has largely been ignored in Arabia and historically has not been seen as a problem. Legislation to protect freshwater habitats hardly exists, making conservation near impossible. In a land as arid as Arabia, water is precious. Finding a balance between human needs and the preservation of our natural world remains our greatest challenge.